Hello friends, my name is Aaron Prosser and I'm the rector here at St. Peter's Anglican Church in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining me today, whenever it is, as we continue our journey through St. Matthew's Gospel. We're going to move on to the next paragraph, that is the second chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 16 through 18. If you have a copy of Scripture in front of you, I invite you to use that copy. If you don't, as usual, I'll put a link into the YouTube description field that will take you to a free site where you can interact with it there. I invite you to pause the video so that you might be able to look at that, and I will read it for you. Our text says, "Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken of by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." Now, friends, after a reading like that, you don't need me to tell you this is a difficult passage of Scripture. You don't hear too many sermons preached on this one. We tend to skip forward into another paragraph. But I would like to stop here today. I would like to continue forward and stop on this paragraph. Because, frankly, we are living in a time where there is much weeping. We are living in a time where there is much evil. It seems like it's increasing, or at least it's certainly getting a whole lot more press. And this morning, the Holy Family has escaped, warned by God that Herod was going to come after Jesus. They took him into Egypt. The three wise men, or we don't know whether there were three or not, but I show here my own culture that we were taught to call them that. They have escaped as well, being warned by God to go home a different way, to not check in with Herod as he had wanted them to there in Jerusalem. And Herod, realizing this, is furious. And you have to realize that Herod was known for incredible atrocities. This would have been a drop in the bucket compared to what Herod had done, the hundreds of people that he had killed in government, in the public. Numbers are not given here, but from what we understand of the period, the region of Bethlehem would have contained about 1,000 people altogether. And so they estimate that we're speaking about 30 children at this point. But that doesn't make it easy, does it, friends? To say, oh, well, it's only 30 children does not make it okay, does not make it any less of a slaughter, does not make it any less of a sin and a grief. And the question is immediately asked in my heart and in so many others, why did God not warn those families too? Could those families not have fled to Egypt? And friends, I'm going to just tell you directly, I do not know. There is a word, a theological term for this. It's called theodicy, the problem of evil, the problem of pain. Why does God allow it? Why does he not do more to stop it? Yes, we know the great promises that Jesus is going to return and fix all things, and the problem of sin in our own hearts and our own world, including this, is going to be fixed. But what about now? Why was this not prevented? Why was what I saw on the news last night not prevented? Why was what is going on in my own body or my own family not prevented? And friends, I have no easy answer for you. Some of our deepest thinkers in the church and over the ages can give you some excellent answers, but they are not simple and straightforward. Suffice to say, God is still here. God is still with you in that moment. I can attest to that personally from my own story, from receiving some very difficult things in my own story, and knowing that moment and asking that question not as a theological conundrum, but as a very personal why. But I would like us to focus for a moment on a different question, not because that one is not important, but a different question that I believe we can answer. And that is, what are we to do with the evil in our world? Like I said, it seems to be getting worse, or at least it seems to be getting more press. I speak primarily to our American listeners. We've had several weeks now where we could say that voices of weeping have been heard, where public violence has broken out, where innocents have been slaughtered. We've seen it in Buffalo, we've seen it in Texas, we've seen it in so many other places. We see it in our own communities, even if it is not the same type of evil and of violence. And my heart makes me ask, as I see the response of so many over and over again, well, we must pray for these people. And of course we must pray for these people. We are called to pray for all, but particularly those who are suffering. But I have to ask myself, are we giving ourselves an easy out when it ends there? Jesus, who said to fulfill all of God's commands was to love God with the heart and the soul and the mind and the strength, and to love our neighbor as ourself. And remember, he defined the neighbor as everyone with whom we came into contact. And the entirety of the New Testament constantly holding out the example of Christ coming and emptying himself and taking on a form of a servant and telling us this is our role as well. To love others as we love ourselves, to love others more than we love ourselves, to serve those around us with the love of Christ. I have to ask myself, in response to what I see going on in my world, in my community, in my school system, in my workplace, is that all that I am called to do? How am I to respond as a disciple of Jesus Christ to this situation here in Uniontown, Pennsylvania? And I ask you the same question. As a disciple of Christ, as someone who is considering being a disciple of Christ, how are you to respond? How would God have you respond in your community? Have you asked him? Do I ask him? And do I actually listen for the answer? Or do I assume I am already doing enough because I pray for those people, because I think of those people, because I send them best thoughts and wishes, perhaps because I contribute to them? And perhaps I am doing everything God is calling me to do, but I realize how little I actually ask God. What is it am I supposed to do? And so I'd like to challenge us with that today. Are we willing to ask God in the face of what's going on in our world? Are we being the disciples that you have called us to be? Are we ready to do what you call us to do? I don't know exactly what that would look like in your community. I'm beginning to discover it in mine. It's not a one-day thing. It's not an immediate process. Are we willing to even go there, friends? I invite us to consider this. Thank you so much for joining me for a few minutes here. I invite you to join me again soon as we continue our journey through the Gospel of Matthew. Until then, be well and be healthy, and may God bless us with his presence, with his peace, and with guidance in these days.